Shalom, brothers and sisters. This is Dr. William Schnoebelen, coming to you from With One Accord Church Ministries with another in our series of Tales from the Crypt, accounts of rather strange things that have happened to me in my early life that led me deeper and deeper into the occult. And this time we're going to talk about what happened to me in the late 1970s. We're going to talk about the fact that I had a spirit guide, shall we say, induced encounter with what appears to be a UFO. But we'll get more into that in a minute. I just want to explain up front that for those of you that may not be well versed in the whole UFO thing, which is, pretty well been popularized by TV and movies over the decades, in if you want to call it the science of ufology, study of UFOs, a professor of astronomy, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, back, I think it was in the 1970s, created a kind of categorization of UFO encounters, which I'm going to explain before I get into my story. And he basically said originally he said there were three kinds. There's the close encounter of the first kind, and that is when you see some sort of unidentified light in the heavens for which there's no obvious explanation. In other words, you see an unidentified aerial phenomenon. Okay, the second variety, the close encounter of the second kind, is when you see or you experience physical evidence of an unknown craft on the ground. And by that I mean things like burn marks in a field, like scorching, or like things that might look like the landing pad of an aircraft or something crushing down crops or grass, things of that nature, stuff like that. The close encounter of a third kind, which of course was popularized by the film back in the late 70s by Steven Spielberg, is when you have an actual encounter with a UFO and or its occupants. Now those were the original three kinds. But later on, as the field of research and people reporting things continued, we had the close encounter of the fourth kind, which is when a person, and there have been literally tens of thousands of people that report this, when people have been abducted or in some way taken aboard some sort of unknown craft and having varying degrees of frightening things done to them. This phenomenon has been going on for at least back in the 1960s and has gotten more and more, if you want to use the word popular, in the last 25 or 30 years. So, and again, Hollywood has made movies about this stuff, and so that creates this kind of feedback loop. Well, okay, if you want to know more about this, and indeed the whole content of this particular video, we do have a DVD that's called Disclosure, which is a over 2-hour teaching on this that I did in Roswell, New Mexico, back I think around 2005 or 2006. That's very comprehensive on this. So check that out if you're intrigued by what I'm about to share. Okay, my personal story, I think as most of you know, I was deeply into the occult. I was a trance channeler or medium, which meant I had spirit guides speaking through me. And understand, those spirit guides were demons. And if you know someone who's involved with this kind of thing, a lot of New Age people do this, understand that the supposed ascended masters or spirit guides speaking through these things, these people, whatever, are demonic. They are not actually either deceased human beings or some kind of enlightened angelic being, because none of them promote the gospel of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ. So, putting that up front. The other thing I want to say up front is that, in my opinion, in being a student of the whole UFO phenomenon for literally half a century, because I was studying this stuff when I was a teenager, and then since getting born again and being a student of the Bible, I have come to understand that these supposed aliens are actually fallen celestial beings. In other words, they're fallen angels. And again, if you want more on this, we have the DVD disclosure. So I just wanted to put all that out there. So here I am. I'm living in Milwaukee. I'm the high priest of literally hundreds of people, covens under me, witchcraft covens, and I'm also a medium, trance channeler. And I got instructions in 1978, January, from my spirit guides to go to the Menominee River Parkway, which was some distance from our house, and there was supposed to be some kind of rendezvous there. So being, accustomed to doing what my spirit guides told me to do, which is stupid, but, I was an unsaved individual back then. And so it was, like I was supposed to go, it was like 9 o'clock at night, and this was in January 22nd of that year. And it was bitter cold, and I went there, and I got out of my car and kind of hung around, and in a few minutes, I saw this brilliant light in the heavens, incredibly bright. It was brighter than like a jet would be if it was flying overhead. It was silent. There was no, sound like a helicopter would make or any other kind of aircraft, and I was engulfed by that light. And the next thing I knew, I was apparently, and again, all of this is subject to debate. I could have been somehow given a drug or whatever, but I didn't take a drug, okay? Just so we understand, I was not under the influence of any recreational chemicals. So, in any event, I was waking up, I was naked on a, bed or something like that in this strange room, all by myself at first, and it was terrifying. And then these strange beings came in that looked kind of, well, if you've seen the movie Close Encounters, you kind of know what they look like. Big heads, huge black eyes, humanoid but very weird. And they probed my body in ways I'd rather not get into. And then I was led into this room. And this is the place where this story departs from the usual abduction story. Because I was led into this big room that looked like a boardroom. And there was this big, oddly enough, wooden desk, or, kind of like what you'd see like in a congressional hearing. And there were like about a dozen entities sitting at this desk looking at me. And most of them looked kind of human, but a few of them did not. And I didn't know what was going on. I was really frightened. And they started asking me questions in English, perfect English, and oddly enough, they were examining me about my knowledge of Freemasonry. Now, isn't that interesting? And I answered the questions because I was a serious, at that time, very serious student of Masonry. And I apparently passed the course because in any event, the next thing I know, I kind of blacked out or something was done to me, and I was back in the park, laying flat on my back, thankfully fully dressed because it was really cold. And I went home, and when I, got on, because I was like freezing. I don't know how long I was laying there on the ground, but you get a kind of a chill that gets in deep into your bones, even though I had a parka, and whatnot. And I took a shower, and I found some rather strange marks all over my body in different areas. So it was very, very weird. Now I'm telling all this as a cautionary tale to bring to this current issue that I want to address. First of all, understand that in the experience of our work and the work of other people that are both Christian ministers or deliverance ministers, but also students of the UFO phenomenon, they have noted that in the vast majority of cases, by no means all of them, but in the vast majority of cases, the people who have had experiences with UFO phenomenon in whatever form, they tend to be people with a background in the occult to a greater or lesser degree. And you could say as well that they may even have ancestry, you know, like maybe their parents or grandparents were dabblers in the occult, or they were into Freemasonry or something like that. Now, there are people, you know, including, you know, solid Christians that have never been involved in the occult that have been abducted and that have had this experience as well. So I'm not trying to paint a really broad brush, but just so you understand that the UFO phenomenon, especially the abduction phenomenon, and the occult have been kind of going hand in hand down through the decades since this first started, because the first UFO sighting was in 1947. So that's, you know, 70 some years ago, 75 years ago or more. And so there's that component, and I address that in deep ways in this DVD called Disclosure. So just to get that out of the way, here's why I want to talk about this. Right now, there is a movie that has just come out, I think, you know, a few days ago. It's an animated film from Pixar, which is a subsidiary of Disney, and they're very well known for their charming, family-friendly cartoons, if you will. You know, things like Toy Story and A Bug's Life and a whole bunch of their films. Well, this one is called Elio, E-L-I-O. And it's about a little boy, I think he's supposed to be around 11 years old, and again, this is animated, who wants to be abducted by aliens. And that's the story. And, you know, he's a lonely little boy from a broken home, and he feels alienated from his friends. He feels like he's a misfit. And because of this, he is yearning for aliens to come down and abduct him. And the trailer for the film postulates at first, it says that, you know, 4 million people have claimed to be abducted by aliens. And I've never heard that figure, but it might be true, it might not be true, because of course Hollywood lies all the time. And then they say, but this kid wanted to be abducted. So that's the basis of it. And without going into too much depth, the plot of the story ends up that he is chosen to be a intergalactic ambassador by this, it's supposed to be like this huge intergalactic wonderful thing, and it's called the Communiverse. So it's kind of like, you know, communism and universe put together. Now that should raise some eyebrows. But of course, you know, oh, well, we don't mean communism. Of course not. Well, whatever. It's Hollywood, baby. Anyhow, so that's the plot of the movie. And here's the problem with this. This is targeted for little children. And the last thing that we need right now is for our children to be somehow encouraged by this film to want to be abducted by aliens, because the way the devil works, and I hope I don't have to explain this too much in depth, but understand that you need often an open doorway for him to come in and start messing with you or your children. And one of those open doorways can be the occult, either ancestral from ancestors or your own dabbling. But also, if you have an adult or a young person who starts wishing, I wish aliens would abduct me, that's an open doorway. And that gives the evil one an opportunity to come in and start messing with your child. And understand that the demons can assume certain forms. They can manipulate things, especially if you haven't prayed over your home, you know, done the remitting of the sin of the shedding of innocent blood over the land, things like that. So this is a film, I think it is extremely dangerous. It's probably even more dangerous than all the films that are out there that promote the occult, because we have been sold this line that okay, there's all these benevolent alien races out there, like, you know, Mr. Spock and, you know, this and that and the other thing, and that somehow they're all more enlightened than we are. And this trope has been around since the 1950s with the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still. So the idea is, okay, if I am this misfit kid, and of course there's a tremendous number of children who come from broken homes in this country. I mean, more than half the families in America are divorced, things like that, which is a tragedy in itself. And they feel lonely. I mean, every child at times feels like they're being rejected by their peers, like they're weird, you know, and, you know, because childhood, especially nowadays, has been made into a whole big traumatic thing, which it shouldn't be. And this movie is the hero of this film, this Elio, is like that kind of child, and a lot of these kids out there are going to identify with him, and they're going to have this idea put in their head, well, maybe it's because I need to be abducted by aliens and be turned into some kind of wonderful intergalactic ambassador or something. Because you know how little children are. I mean, they don't have the discernment that adults do. And it's dangerous. And I just have to tell you this. The phenomenon of alien abduction is a horrible satanic thing. And I don't just mean in a spiritual sense. I mean, many of the people who are survivors, and I use that word carefully, survivors of alien abduction will report that it was the most horrible, frightening thing they've ever experienced in their lives. And I will tell you from the experience that I had, which was comparatively benign compared to some of the accounts you will read about, I had nightmares about it. I had kind of PTSD about it for many years until I finally got born again in 1984. So this is terrifying stuff. And if a little child kind of, if you will, opens up their heart and invites this stuff into their lives, even in a very apparently harmless, imaginative way, it can be an open doorway. And so I would really encourage you to not let your child see this film. And there's probably marketing stuff. There's probably little toys, and you know how all these different outfits do it when they put out especially a child movie. You know, they probably have Happy Meals with little Elio figures and little alien figures in it. This is horrible stuff, and you need to keep it away from your children. Realize, if you haven't already done so, realize that Hollywood is totally after your children. They want to destroy the spirituality, the innocence of your children. And that's why, you know, I know there are good Christian places that produce children's films. Yeah, do that. But keep your children away from anything, especially from Disney. And because it used to be, you know, when I was a kid, Disney was, oh, this nice family friend. Not anymore. Disney is a hellhole. And its agenda is very obviously anti-Christ, and it wants to destroy the innocence of your children. So that's basically what I want to say. I would encourage you, again, realize that the culture, TV, media is really trying to corrupt your children. Create a safe space around them. Pray for them. You know, anoint them. Hug them. Let them know that they are loved, and teach them the Bible. You know, whatever you need to do. Don't, if you're in a church, that's great, but don't just trust the church to like have Sunday school for your children, you know, children's church, whatever. Take it upon yourself as a mother or father to train up your children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, and pray for them. I tell people, never let your child leave the house without praying for them. And again, depending on how old they are, if they're a little child, you know, pray for them and put the armor of Elohim on them. If they're older, teach them to do that and pray with them to do that before they leave your house in the morning. Because if you have children, they are your most precious possession, and you need to treat them like that. Okay, I hope this has been helpful. Again, I would exhort you to please pray for our ministry. Please subscribe and share if you've not already done so. Share this video with people, especially if you know people that are parents that might not be as well informed about this stuff as you are. And also please pray about supporting the work of this ministry. We have a card up here that shows you how you might do that, because again, we're in the summer months when finances tend to thin out a little bit. So we would really appreciate your prayers and your support. Thank you so much. Thank you for carrying the light of Yeshua in your hearts and minds. Thank you for keeping your children safe. Thank you for praying for us. In the mighty name of Yeshua HaMashiach, Shalom, Shalom.